Good morning, Nigeria. It's a beautiful morning here in the capital city, Abuja. And this is Daybreak reaching you from the nation's capital here on Trust Television. My name is Ayuba Ilia.
And I'm Zainab Bala. Thank you so much for joining us this beautiful morning. I'm glad you had the time to join us this morning, and we hope that today is going to be quite an exciting day for us all.
We want to welcome specially some group of people who sometimes we would say they are first-timers, maybe on the show, but maybe not on Trust TV in general. So we welcome the first-timers joining us on Daybreak this morning, and we want you to make a date with us every weekday, 7 a.m. to 9 a.m. This show holds to bring you heads up on all the recent happenings, to basically keep you updated on what is happening in Nigeria. And quite a lot is really going on these days.
Indeed, quite interesting and quite alarming at the same time.
Alarming, I like the word, because I mean, we've seen, several agitations all over the country. The very recent one is the End SARS anniversary that we saw. Nnamdi Kanu is in court as well. And then a whole lot. And
There's
then
so much
yesterday, something that looked, well, it was an explosion. It didn't look like it. It was an explosion of one of the rail lines of the Nigerian Railway Corporation. Caused a whole lot of panic. And we'll be looking at a whole lot today on the show. And we'll be joined by the president of the Nigerian Guild of Editors, Mustafa Isa, and he'll be bringing us thoughts on the recent happenings in the country. We also have one of our very own to give us, analysis on the newspaper headlines today on the show. Now, let's take a look at the events of 22nd of October in world history. In our usual way, we call it Today in History. Take a look. Well, there you have it. International Stuttering Day today is commemorated all over the world. And, one will think, oh, okay, so we have an International Stuttering Day.
This day,
I
think this day deserves to be celebrated because when you, you interact with those who actually stutter, sometimes you feel quite sad for them because they have so much to express. And then sometimes they get angry as well when you don't understand what it is they're trying to tell you.
And people say that they easily get upset, because of the deficiency in speech and all of that. But I've seen people who have come over that over time, that they've been able to do better. In fact, I've seen a couple of people who stutter and they sing. So when they sing very well. You don't hear the stuttering. But when they are talking, they stutter. It's kind of strange, when you see this. But then, when you think about it, that's God for you. I mean,
right.
He created people differently. And sometimes people were born with this. And it may look like deficiency to you, but trust me, some have made it a point of, turnaround for themselves.
Right.
You find that some, out of the inability, they've made it an ability, and some of them are quite talented.
Now,
and today is a day to create awareness about that.
One important thing we need to come off is, sometimes there are stigma attached to some of these things, and people tend to stigmatize people who have certain deficiencies, and I think we need to, move past that.
And yes, we should also know that it's not a death sentence, and I don't think that it in any way depreciate the intellect of anybody, that you have that condition. You should go about your business confidently. Don't feel inferior to anyone. It doesn't mean because you have, this speech deficiency, then you are less of a human being. I don't think so. You are as intelligent as anyone. You are as capable as anyone. So do not let that put you down. Just find your niche and,
push through.
Capitalize on your strength.
Right.
Everyone has his own weakness. No one is perfect, after all. So, well, today is your day, and we celebrate with you.
Right.
Yes,
we celebrate with them.
Yes, yes. All right, then. Again, next is the dailies on Daybreak this morning. Let's take a quick break, and then when we come back, you get to meet our reviewer of today. Stay with us.
But in a situation where you find that they must look like the same,
not necessarily tribal or regional.
but I have said that.
All right, there you have it. Now we'll be taking a look at the stories that made the headlines on our newspapers this morning. And we have in the studio Suleiman, Deputy Editor-in-Chief, Daily Trust newspaper, to give us perspectives on some of these stories that we're looking at today. We'll begin with Daily Trust newspaper, and the first story right at the top beside the Trust TV logo, you would see INEC to National Assembly. Give us unrestricted powers to use tech in 2023. That's the Independent National Electoral Commission. The lead story on Daily Trust: ISWAP and Saru bomb rail track, ground Abuja Kaduna services. The riders there says, we had a bang before train came to a standstill. That's according to commuters. NRC to lose 19 million naira daily to service suspension. Federal government confirms killing of new ISWAP leader Baku. The pictorial is showing you the affected rail lines yesterday, affected by the explosion. There's a whole lot of conversation about who is responsible for the explosion, but that's also another discussion to look at later. But you can get also the details on Daily Trust newspaper on page 5 and 7. Beside that pictorial, you would find the story saying Queen Elizabeth spent night in hospital. That's on page 45. I can imagine that. Quite an old lady.
Quite an old lady.
Yes. Akure pastor rapes girl at Market Square. You'd find that on page 36. And then court rejects Kanu's request, remands him in DSS custody. The story at the bottom of that: help us diagnose insecurity. Police, DSS, others beg editors. So there is the meeting of the Nigerian Guild of Editors ongoing. Started yesterday and happening today as well. That meeting is going to be bringing together over 300 journalists and owners of media platforms. Also, you would find security agencies are also part of that meeting. So I believe that this is emanating from there. We'll be having the president of the Nigerian Guild of Editors later on the show to talk about the ongoing conference. Well, that's that on the Daily Trust newspaper.
Okay, let's take a look at some of the stories that made headlines on the Punch newspaper this morning. And you find on page 26 rather, external reserves gained $3.98 billion in 3 weeks, hit $40.76 billion. And you'd find on page 40, Senate folds federal government rising recurrent votes, overhead amidst job embargo. And you'd also find on page 3 of the Punch newspaper, bandits bomb train, NRC's 267 million naira month revenue, loan repayment threatened. You'd also find on page 23, bank customers, POS operators groan as telcos block 47 local governments. And the very big headline there right on the Punch newspaper, says Nnamdi Kanu's trial. NBA, Ohanaeze, others attack federal government as DSS bars lawyers, journalists. We saw in videos yesterday how journalists and lawyers were barred from having access to the court. A writer is saying banning lawyers, journalists, despicable. Court is a public place. That's according to the NBA. Another writer is saying Ohanaeze demands federal government's apology over treatment of Igbo delegation. You see a pictorial there where you get to see Nnamdi Kanu and his lawyers smiling. You'd also see a form of violence happening where the police are pushing people into one of their trucks right there. You see on page 14, Tinubu's presidential campaigners inaugurate Ekiti APC Parallel Exco. And you see on page 4 and page 6, outrage as rogue policemen, neighborhood watch torture innocent Uber driver, 2 tow vehicles. And on page 3, you'd find 30 Kebbi Federal FGC kidnapped students released after 126 days in captivity. These are some of the stories on the Punch newspaper.
All right, so now let's take a look at other papers, and The Nation is next. The Nation says at the very top you'd find nothing must stop Anambra poll, Buhari tells service chiefs. Yesterday there was this meeting with the service chiefs and the president. Then NHRC boss, Ekiti AG, 70 others get SANS rank. Life jail awaits drug lawbreakers, says Marwa. Lagos will implement hashtag NSAS panel report. You'd find that on page 2. And then below the nameplate, Kanu pleads not guilty to treasonable felony charge. IPOP leader remains in DSS custody. Trial resumes November 10th. Now, the lead story on The Nation says explosion on Abuja-Kaduna rail track disrupts operations. Hundreds of passengers stranded. We are working to resume services, says NRC boss. More crisis in PDP over deputy chair. Makinde justifies ban on Oladipo, Olafeso, others. Aspirants vow to appeal. And the pictorial there is showing you the damaged rail line and the rail track there. Yesterday, the Abuja-Kaduna rail track on the Nation newspaper. That's that on The Nation, I would say.
Okay, now The Guardian this morning, you'd find on page 3, PDP disqualifies Olafeso, 2 others, clears 27 ahead of convention. You'd also find on page 3, e-Naira users can't spend above 500,000 daily, says CBN. And the headline there states, Southeast on lockdown, jubilant mood as Kanu pleads not guilty. And part of the rider is stating, Ezefe, Igbo leaders, Shori, journalist barred from court. Sit at home, Southeast on full compliance at schools, markets, banks remain shut. Another writer is saying IPOB gives condition to dialogue with federal government. You'd also find we won't relent until Kanu detained IPOB members regain freedom, says Ohanaeze. You'd also see explore dialogue. Alternative resolution to ease tension, federal government told. Heavy security in Asaba over Kanu's trial. You'd also see transparency issues trail federal government's 1 trillion naira COVID-19 palliative to private sector. So these are some of the stories you'd find on The Guardian this morning.
All right. Well, we have some of them like we mentioned earlier, talking about the story about the bombing of the rail track of the Abuja-Kaduna rail line seemed to be on virtually all the papers. Again, let's welcome Suleiman, Deputy Editor-in-Chief, Daily Trust newspaper, in the studio. Good morning.
Yeah, good morning, and thank you for having me.
Good morning.
Thank you.
Now, let's take a look at the perspectives, on this recent issue. That sounds scary, when you see that ISWAP and SARU are becoming more audacious. I mean, not that this is the first of its kind, but it doesn't look like, we are making headway.
Well, I think that's what they're trying to communicate, that they are still here and they're still strong, and that they're still capable of hitting Nigeria and Nigerians, particularly where it matters most. But the thing is, sometimes when people try to show strength, it's actually demonstrating weakness, that particularly for terrorist organizations, when they are about to be rounded up, when they, you have them cornered altogether, they can slash and, and do anything that they can just to show that they are still strong. I think this is one of the cases. But the more intriguing part of the story is that there's been this intelligence, according to the reporters, that over the past few weeks and months, intelligence sources within security agencies have actually alerted government about the possibility that the same rail line might be hit by ISWAP and other terrorist elements in the country. So, and even without that, the very fact that you used to have these attacks on the Kaduna-Abuja Expressway, which became reduced precisely because of this rail line, I think that should have alerted government to think of some security measure for these rails, So whereas it is an indication that this Boko Haram or ISWAP and all these terrorists are becoming more daring, but it's also an indication of laxity of the kind we have in our security. They're always responding to situations, you understand, rather than being ahead of situations and mitigating them or trying to prevent them from happening. So that's the angle here.
Now, we've seen witnesses, narrate what actually happened in these trains.
Yes.
But some would say, well, it's shocking to hear from the NRC saying that it was not gunmen or it was not an attack. Rather, it was caused by vandals. What are your thoughts about that?
Yeah, that's a very interesting dimension because, number one, the NRC, it's a company. It's not a security organization. So I don't think it has analysts who can analyze, who does what with rail tracks. The best it can say is that its tracks have been vandalized. You understand? So, but then again, it reflects the kind of public relations we have in the country generally, that when something happens, maybe the best reaction is to deny that it has actually happened or to try to downplay it, So maybe it's doing so from a business perspective, that if you say it has been, the train or the rails have been attacked by bandits or by terrorist elements, that means it will scare people away from, and they are still in debt. So maybe that's the perspective that they're looking at. But the more important thing is to be honest with Nigerians, to say that this is not our responsibility. It is the responsibility of the security agencies to find out and investigate who are responsible for that. And when we have information about that, we tell the public.
Well, we believe so much that the rail, the trains have become one of the safest means for us to travel within Nigeria, given the fact we have so much security challenges. And now that these trains are being attacked, what perception will this give the common Nigerian?
Very good question. I think, again, this really shows that running a country is a systematic, and systemic process. If one side is okay, and then the others are not, what tends to happen is that the pressure will mount on that one side. And I think that's precisely the strategic reason why any terrorist elements in the country want to attack the rail lines, because they see that people have already given up more or less on rail travel. So whether they travel mostly by air or by rail, people have given up on road travel. So what this means is that there is no escape. There is no short or corner measures to this. The only solution is to see how do we get rid of these situations, and all options should be on the table, including negotiations, including amnesty, including the use of force or any other options, because it is our country. It's not like Americans dealing with terrorism in another country. It is Nigerians dealing with terrorism in Nigeria. So any options, anything that can lead to permanent and lasting solutions should be on the table, including, of course, force.
I am, pushed to ask this question: that is it even that difficult to ensure that there is safety, on the rail lines or on the roads or in Nigeria generally? What are we not doing right? Are we, for instance, taking advantage of technology as we should in this instance?
Thank you. That's a very intelligent question as well. What normally happens is that security has a social infrastructure. It is an infrastructure that is not necessarily related to security, but which helps a country to become more secure, which helps security agencies and security organizations in their day-to-day job. You understand? One of these is the technology you are talking about. All this idea of name, identities, addresses, even the mere fact that all homes should have an address, and all individuals should be tied to a particular home address in a country, has a security implication, because it makes it easier for us to know who is involved and what and where they come from. You understand? So if you had 24/7 electricity and you had a CCTV camera or CCTV cameras across the entire length of the rails, because if you had CCTV, you will have it across the entire country and in areas where human activities are going on. So you will have them on rail tracks as well. If you had that, those who did this will be aware that there is a good chance that one or other cameras will, get a picture of them, even if they wear masks. You can still use
at least you can
technology.
see that something is going on.
Exactly. And you can use forensic technologies to still identify, to still get to the identities of those involved. You understand? So again, it boils down to our lack of electricity, because that's the number one technology anyone can think of in a modern world. You understand? So if you had that, probably most of this will have reduced. All these people calling themselves bandits and staying in what you have in forests and thinking that they are strong and terrorizing people. If you had technology, there are many ways you can deal with them without really having to incur any too much collateral damage.
Okay. Now another point to note is federal government confirms killing of new ISWAP leader Bako. Do we have details, of this?
Well, the thing is, this news, and again, that's the interesting thing. The story about the train attack cannot be separated, at least from an analytical point of view, cannot be separated from the killings of the ISWAP leaders and Boko Haram leaders in recent months and weeks. You understand? Because it might indicate a sort of response from the group themselves. They are trying to respond to their leaders being taken out again and again. But what normally happens regarding this killing of leaders is the security agencies are usually certain that this person has been killed, but sometimes they take quite a while to say so, because of the experience we had with Shekau, where he died many times, until his final death. And even now, we're not entirely sure that that's the final death, So this kind of things, they are careful how they announce that someone has been killed, but also how they have been killed, because sometimes they die as a result of their own internal wranglings and skirmishes, one faction laying it on the other faction, or sometimes from our Nigerian troops.
Okay.
All right, then. Well, let's go on a quick break now, and then when we come back, the review will continue. Please stay with us.
African fabric is finding its way to the global stage. But Nigeria is losing out on big textile spenders as the local industry faces imminent extinction.
Behind me is the Arewa Textile Mill, established in 1963 and eventually closed down in 2004.
From over 180 textile mills in the 70s, only about 25 mills now operate at less than 40% capacity.
I'm an employee of Arewa Textile PLC before it closed. After a month, I was just like a madman.
In a day, they laid off 4,500.
The once thriving sector struggles to compete with an annual import of $4 billion.
Smuggling is the order of the day.
For manufacturers, we cannot compete.
We visit the nation's textile hubs to seek answers to why the sector has failed to return to its glory days despite government's intervention.
Get latest updates on current topical issues and breaking news by downloading the Trust TV mobile app on your Android devices. Go online, click Google Play Store, search Trust TV, install the app, and get doses of unfiltered information on happenings all over the world in your pocket. Trust TV, documenting the Nigerian story.
Nice to see you, sir. You got a 10-year-old son, a 12-year-old son. He's a shill boy. Yeah. And how did he get to that stage? You allowed it to happen. You allow it to fester. It's like a cancer.
It's a failure of the family, a failure of the society, and a failure of governance.
We are still going into some other hideouts to see if any apprehensions will be made tonight.
To operate within the context of the law with much respect to human rights.
All right, thank you for staying with us. It's Daybreak on Trust Television. Now, we want to take a look at some of the reports that were filed yesterday on this issue of the rail tracks that were vandalized, or I would say, destroyed by some criminal elements. Take a look at it.
This this is how empty the railway station in Idu is at the moment. We received reports that last night the train heading to Kaduna from Abuja was attacked by bandits, and explosives were actually thrown on the tracks, and it was difficult for them to actually move through Jere to Kaduna. They had to come back to Abuja. Well, right now we've actually tried to speak to, the people in charge, and we've been bounced from one person to another. None of them is saying anything, saying that we have to take permission. We need express permission from the top, and we've been unable to, speak to the operations manager as well. As you can see, when we came in, we actually just found a few people who I think are still yet to get over the shock, that they will not be able to travel to their destination. But no one is here, and we've actually confirmed that there are no inbound trains coming in, and there are also no outbound trains, going away from Abuja. So this is the situation that we're in right now, but we're yet to confirm if the train was actually attacked by bandits or it was just vandals, as the managing director had already earlier told Daily Trust, our Daily Trust correspondent. In the early hours of Thursday, 21st of October 2021, Trust TV received unconfirmed reports that an outbound train to Kaduna from Abuja was attacked by bandits using explosives the previous night. Videos and photos of damaged train tracks quickly went viral, sending panic everywhere. Upon investigation, Trust TV discovered that there was indeed an attack responsible for the closure of the terminals and e-ticketing sites, but no staff would speak to us.
I've not been there.
But the place is empty. The place is empty. Normally, it's usually filled up, from passengers traveling to and from.
Yes, it's because of the attack. That's why.
Because of the attack.
Yeah.
But you said you can't confirm.
I can't confirm. I can't confirm. I may tell you something that is not right, is not correct. That is why I'm avoiding. And they categorically told us that we shouldn't grant any interview with anybody.
Daily Trust video journalist shares first-hand experience on what occurred Wednesday, 20th of October 2021.
Left Kubwa train station today by 7:25 a.m. and arrived at Jere, the railway station at Jere. So we stopped for a while. We didn't know what was going on. We tried to inquire what was the problem. So we were told at first that we had to wait for the train coming from Kaduna to pass before we could proceed with the journey. So we thought that was it. Then when the train arrived and then passed, now this rumor started, going around, flying like that the railway track had been damaged by dynamites that has been planted by bandits, according to what we heard. So at first we were like, this is a joke. Why was the other train able to pass if there was actually that problem? Because it's the same rail line that we were going to follow. So, but much later we confirmed that it was true. And then we were stranded there for over 2 hours. We were waiting. The railway officials said they couldn't do anything. They had to communicate with people from Abuja first before they would know the next line of action. So we stayed and stayed. After much time, they confirmed that we could actually, the only option for us was to return. So there was a lot of complications because we couldn't follow that rail to go back. So they had to, there's a way they set the railway track that they have to turn it automatically for us to go back, but there was no such facility to do that. So they had to do it manually. So after some time, they succeeded in doing it and we were able to come back to Abuja.
Idle shuttle drivers and traders within the vicinity are not left out.
All of us are sitting here because we have seen there is an attack with train. Then they're not allowed to move. Train turn back to return people back to here. All of us we are here standing. We don't have anything to do. All of our customers they are calling. Nobody come. We be surprised for us. Surprised. I just want government to help us for insecurity. Because this train here been helping people for security, but this sound happen is just a surprise for us. All of us we have been surprised. We don't know what happened against it. Because this train should never happen before. This is the first time. Then we are surprised about what happened. We don't really know.
Business has not been good though. Everywhere is very dull. Business is dull as well too. So we are not happy. I'm very sad. As you are seeing me, I'm sad. According to what I heard, they said that some gunmen attacked the train last night, the last train. So that's what I heard. I don't know if anything else is involved. I don't know. What I want the government to do is to increase more security in the town, so that people can be well secured. Because if the train is well secured, these people will not find their way. So that is what I think.
As I come work today, there is no customer. I just wait here. I think say maybe customer will come there, but I don't see customer. I want them to try and settle the problem so that the customer will come back and our business will still move well.
I started yesterday being Wednesday. So the time train is supposed to come, so the train no come. So we know that side, so they'll be complaining about this bandits on the train track, so that they do something. So, but we are not sure about what they did. So, and train have not been coming the right time it's supposed to come. So we driver, we are stranded. We don't even know exactly what is happening. I think we need enough security on those train track, because this country, all these bandits of 18 is too much. It's too much for here. It's too much.
Thank you so much.
In short, I'm not feeling all right. I'm not feeling happy. Basically, because the way how the train is not moving, many customers that are calling me in the phone, I pick their call. They say they ask me whether there is train. I say there is no train because the train has a fault. So that is why I'm not happy. But if the train is moving, I know that I'll be getting customers now. I have never yet called anybody among the staff, but some passengers are telling me that there is something bandage. Is it bandage on the road? That there is bomb that attack the train, but I don't know whether it's true or lie.
Yeah, I do carry back, help people, and get some money to eat. So as for now that the train is not moving, I won't be able to get anything to eat again.
Even as Nigerians allay their fears on security, they also wonder what travel options are available if the Kaduna-Abuja trains cease to function. Dashan Hussaina Usman, Trust TV News.
Passenger for 2 p.m. train just came here and discovered that there was no train. Everywhere was, it was just scanty, and the Nigeria Railway Corporation staffs are refusing to say anything. And we just heard that the train got stuck somewhere, and there's no movement.
What did they tell the officials in the train station? What did they tell you so far?
Basically, it was just one person that spoke and said the train got spoiled along the line, and he doesn't think there's going to be movement at all. So there's nothing that is going to happen. But as of 2 hours ago, I overheard somebody said she's still booked for 2 p.m. So we don't know exactly what the problem is. We don't know how true the information is. Well, we just believe everything is going to be fine.
So what about your ticket? Have you booked online?
Yes, I booked yesterday night. One of the officials said we could use it as a return ticket tomorrow or next. That's what he said. But with the way technology here in Nigeria is, we don't think that is going to work. We'll just hope and see if it's really going to work.
Yes, I'm a passenger truly. I booked my ticket 12:30 noon. So unfortunately, I was even rushing to the train station because I know sometimes the train moved to 2 o'clock because I'm come from far distance. So unfortunately, I reached the train station. I saw everybody standing. I said, what is happening? So one of the passengers just told me, guy, there is no ticket. There is no train, sorry. So I asked him, what is the problem? He said, no train for today. I said, but I've already booked now. He told me, no, everybody you see here standing, have already booked. I said, but there's no any information that the train is not moving, and most of the workers, everybody have left.
Well, there you have it. The implication, of having that rail line being vandalized is what we are seeing. It's something that has, a multiply effect, if you may say, because there are a whole lot of businesses surrounding, those rail train stations. And once anything like this happens and there's a suspension, then a whole lot of other businesses are affected. But what's the extent of this impact? Has been highlighted here.
First of all, the economic impact. You see, when you were reading out the news stories in Daily Trust, it was estimated yesterday that the Nigerian Railway Corporation will be losing 19 million daily. And then the Punch calculated this over a month, that if this goes on for 1 month, they'll be losing over 200 million, and so on. So that's the first thing to consider, that is going to affect the NRC. But not just the NRC, but also the federal government, because the rails are part of arrangement with China, and they're actually trying to pay back now. The whole thing has not yet become Nigerian, doesn't belong to us yet. We're still indebted to the Chinese, and we're looking for ways to pay. So that's one area. But probably more significantly is the passengers, the impact, because a lot of people that are traveling between Kaduna and Abuja are not traveling just for leisure or for fun. For most people, they're traveling for businesses. You understand? Either they are going for work officially or even going for official businesses between the two ends of the town. And in some cases, it's not just people are stopping in Abuja or Abuja. Sometimes people are actually going on to Lagos, or people are moving on to Kano or other parts of northern Nigeria. So it's an important linkage within the Nigerian economic network. So that impact is going to be there. And as you can see from the stories, even the ordinary people who are selling food, who are selling items in railway stations and across the various stations across the entire track, they too will take a hit.
And that's a very important sector, isn't it? I mean, in the olden days, we heard about how these, businesses around train stations were, thriving and doing very well. In fact, you find that a whole lot of social-cultural integration, happened in Nigeria as a result of this linkage of this train station. So it seems like a very, very significant aspect of our economy, isn't it?
Certainly. And it's interesting, the historical dimension, you look at it. Cities like Mena, for example, like Zaria, Yonsan, like Kaduna, Kano, they became, particularly the first three, Zaria and Kaduna, they became hubs, for multitudes of people from across the country. All of them were brought, they followed the railway line to these places, you understand, and then not just in this part of the country, but other parts of the country as well. So that capacity is there. There's this saying that if you wanted to develop a society, build roads. People will move close to wherever there are roads, you understand, so it's the same as build rail lines and so on. So not just the cosmopolitanism or the economy, even the growth of cities around these hubs is also good, because it helps urbanization. You understand? If our rail lines had continued over time, my guess is that we will have less of people in the rural areas now than we do. You understand? Because more and more people will be moving towards more and more urban centers, and urban areas will be developing more and more. And there is a correlation between economic development and urbanization of some kind, so there's that dimension as well.
Well, we do hope that the government intervenes, in this whole security situation.
Yeah.
Okay, let's look at another angle where The Guardian is leading with a story about Southeast on lockdown. Jubilant mood as Kanu pleads not guilty. So,
yeah.
Quite a lot going on, really, on this whole IPOB thing. An NBA, Ohaneze, others, attack FG as DSS bars lawyers, journalists. That's also another story on the Punch newspaper relating to the trial of Nnamdi Kanu and all of that. But that clampdown that we saw yesterday, is that really necessary?
Well, there are pros and cons to it, Personally, I would love to see that the government makes the courts open so that the proceedings, the trial can be opened. Part of what makes a free and fair trial is the openness to the process, so that people can actually see with their eyes, what's actually going on. So even if you don't allow people for security reasons, because these are there, you understand, and I want to believe that part of the reasons why they don't allow too many people in is the security situation, because IPOB members are busy causing mayhem in the southeast. There's no indication that they may not even try to come and do it here in Abuja, where during the trial of their leader Nnamdi Kanu. So one can see that very clearly. But it is also possible to cover the trial live on TV.
Right.
You understand, just to fulfill that transparency.
Have we done that before in Nigeria? Is that an option?
Well, I don't see how it's not an option. In any case, it's the current Attorney General himself who is saying that they are now allowing video recordings of trials, which should have been going on 30, 40 years ago, where it's amazing how, if you have been to a court, how both the registrar, but especially the judge, you understand, or magistrate, the amount of time they spend taking notes and writing things down, that tends to interfere with the actual flow of the proceedings, and it's a major reason why cases tend to be delayed, and then they keep pushing them forward. So there's nothing wrong. This is, if you have not done it before, there's always a first time for everything. You can start with this, because that openness, particularly for this case, that openness, the fact that the process is transparent, I think is important. And in that regard, I also want to think that it is a good thing that Nnamdi Kanu was brought to the court in the first place. Right. Because the last time they came, the DSS did not bring him to court. Again, maybe because of security situation, But today, yesterday he was in court. So I think that's an advancement. They can look for ways in which they can make the court proceedings more open, because it is important to be for this process to be open, for Nigerians to see that both the judge and the lawyers, everyone is independent, you understand, and it is the legal rather than political issues that are actually taking place.
Now, we've seen cases, situations where journalists, are being harassed, particularly in issues like this. Some would say this is an attempt to gag the media.
Well, maybe yes, maybe not. The thing is this, I'm a journalist, you understand, and in Nigeria, we always talk about the freedom of the press, you understand, the freedom of journalists, and this is important. We must talk about it, it's important to talk about the freedom, but we don't talk about the responsibility side of the press. You understand, that the fact that the press also has a responsibility, particularly on issues like this, that can stoke fire to burning situations, that can lead to mayhem or crisis, or conflict, or, to put it, bloodshed, Sometimes our newspapers, our media can be quite irresponsible in the way they approach this. So that may be some of the reasons why people in authority try
security operatives mounted cordons outside the premises
of journalists to these spaces. You understand? But in general, journalists should have access to these spaces. There's no reason. Even our own reporters were not allowed in. So it's something that all of us are concerned about.
Yes, it's very interesting, really, that this is going on. When we saw that the security officials themselves are asking, the media to help in diagnosing the insecurity, situation in the country. That's also another thing we will look at much later on the program, or I'll say rather shortly on the program, because it's one of the stories on Daily Trust newspaper here. But before that, let's take a look at this report from the trial of yesterday that one of our correspondents put together.
It was amid a heavy security presence that the trial was held. Security operatives mounted cordons outside the premises of the court, with only a select journalists admitted and restricting access to rights groups and some lawyers. Mr. Nnamdi Kanu, who appeared in court, pleaded not guilty to the amended 7-count charges against him. His lead counsel, Barrister Ifeanyi Ejiofor, said the charges were worthless.
After studying the charge, we come to the charge is worthless and empty. So we have filed an application challenging the competency of the charge and the jurisdiction of the court to continue hearing this case. So, and today, our client took plea to the 7-count amended charge. And the matter now adjourned to 10th of November for hearing of application challenging the competence and jurisdiction of the court to hear the case, because we are of the firm view, that the 7-count offense charge preferred against our client did not disclose any offense. So I can't see where somebody will sneeze in London and it become an offense triable in this country. Most of the counts were founded on non-existent law,
Trial judge Justice Binta Nyako also rejected his application to be transferred to a correctional center, ordering him to remain in the custody of the Department of State Security Services for security reasons. Trial was then adjourned to November 10 in Abuja. Aliyu Usman, Trust TV News. It was amid a heavy security presence that the trial was held. Security operatives mounted cordons outside the premises of the court, with only a select journalists admitted and restricting access to rights groups and some lawyers. Mr. Nnamdi Kanu, who appeared in court, pleaded not guilty to the amended 7-count charges against him. His lead counsel, Barrister Ifeanyi Ejiofor, said the charges were worthless.
After studying the charge, we come to a conclusion that the charge is worthless and empty. So we have filed an application challenging the competency of the charge and the jurisdiction of the court to continue hearing this case. So, and today, our client took plea to the 7-count amended charge. And the matter now adjourned to 10th of November for hearing of application challenging the competence and jurisdiction of the court to hear the case, because we are of the firm view, that the 7-count offense charge preferred against our client did not disclose any offense. So I can't see where somebody will sneeze in London and it become an offense triable in this country. Most of the counts were founded on non-existent law.
Trial judge Justice Binta Nyako also rejected his application to be transferred to a correctional center, ordering him to remain in the custody of the Department of State Security Services for security reasons. Trial was then adjourned to November 10 in Abuja. Aliyu Usman, Trust TV News.
Well, that was it. Report on the trial of the leader of the indigenous people of Biafra, IPOB, Nnamdi Kanu. And yesterday it was quite a scene there. You could see the drama that went on there with, both the lawyers, journalists, and every other person who showed up there at that trial. You had, representatives of the Igbo elders who were also there, on ground, and some other parties that are, I would say allies to Nnamdi Kanu. One of them, Sowore, was also there, and we saw some drama that happened yesterday. Quite very interesting. Now, let's tie all of this to the issue of the role of the media. How it is always the first to suffer from such dramas in, public engagements like this. When you go to places, sometimes, in most cases, you find that there's this lack of, cooperation between journalists and security agents. And here in the ongoing conference with the Guild of Editors, we are seeing a request, to the, by the security officials for journalists to help, And so what would be the role of the media in this instance with all of these hostilities?
First of all, to address your first question, why is it that the media are always the first to be hit when these issues? It's because it's the media that provides a linkage between these dramas, as you call them, and the public. If without the media, no one will know their dramas. No one will know they're even happening in the first instance. You understand? So without TV and newspapers and radio stations, the proceedings yesterday at the court will just have proceeded. Not many people would have been aware of it. So that publicness that the media can turn an issue is very, very significant. You understand? Because how the public will interpret it can have an implication on how certain members of the public or even anyone can behave following the coverage. So because the public, the media relate directly to the public and relay information to them, that makes the media very, very important. That's one. Secondly, with regards to issue of how the media, the role that the media can play with the security, this is an issue that we have been dealing with again and again and again in this country, particularly since the rise of Boko Haram 10 or so years ago. It has always been that the media have what you people in the media call social responsibility. You understand, that they ought to be able to approach issues from perspectives that cannot inflame them, that cannot worsen the situation, that can help in a way, to mitigate against the situation. Tons and tons and tons of conferences and workshops, you understand, have been held for media people in the country on peace journalism, on conflict reporting, and all of these issues. But it doesn't appear to, in my opinion, helping matters because of the way the Nigerian media is already structured, because you still see that element of sensationalism, that element that, okay, this is where we are focusing on as against the other side that we are focusing on, that one is always there. And that's the one that really, really drives the conflict even further. The narratives in the streets are pulled into the media, which then reinforce the narratives in the streets as well, even where they are false.
So where do we draw the balance, because there's a dilemma here for the media to, on the one hand, remain relevant, and on the other hand, do the service in which it is meant to do by providing factual information. Yesterday, the Daily Trust was bold enough to lead with a story asking the Amnesty International and other civil society organizations to apologize to the federal government, given the fact that there's no evidence as regarding the Lekki massacre and all of that. That's not a popular stand, and all of that. So how do you, create that balance, by upholding, facts, and being truthful and all of that, and then on the other hand, just be fair, for both sides, really.
Thank you. I agree it's not a popular stand, but it's the right stand. It's the truthful stand. Journalism is not exactly like politics, even though it is intimately associated with politics. Journalism is about the pursuit of truth. Right. And truth must be supported by facts. And facts, too, must be verifiable. So if you say that there has been a massacre at Lekki that you are now celebrating anniversary of, because if you remember, the actual EndSARS started on the 5th of October, not the 20th. So it was the so-called Lekki massacre that is supposed to have happened on the 20th that people are celebrating the anniversary of. You cannot celebrate the anniversary of what has not yet been determined to have happened. You can't say that there was massacre 1 year ago when you cannot show that there has been. You can claim that security agencies pulled away the dead bodies after they've been killed, but where are the families looking to claim their lives? I mean, their loved ones, that, hey, me too, my son, named ABCD, also died in this conflict. Where are they?
Okay.
You had a panel in various states. If anyone died for them, they would have gone there and said that I lost a son, I lost a daughter, I lost a son, I lost a daughter. So you cannot drive a movement of rights based on fiction.
Is it a possibility that some of those claims were struck out? Because in the panel reports that we saw, some claims, some petitions were struck out, for lack of merit or whatever. And is it possible that
if a claim is struck out for lack of merit, then it probably lacked merit, because many other claims were accepted, and even monetary rewards are allocated. I think the Lagos about 400 and something million. So that shows that the process was working well. So if you come with a fictional claim, and Nigerians can do this, you understand, with a fictional claim that you also had been hurt in one way or another, and there is no evidence, because the panel is a legal panel. You understand? It's not like a beer parlor discussion. It's a legal panel. So if you are going to make a claim for injury, you have to tender evidence of that claim. Without that evidence, probably it will be struck out as lacking merit. So if claims were struck out for lacking merit, they probably lacked merit.
Okay. Now, one of the highlights of the conference, is for state governors to dialogue with journalists on some of the challenges, security challenges they are facing in their various states. But some journalists will say, well, there's a form of lack of freedom of information going on, particularly with the elites. So how do we, wrap our heads around that?
The situation is very, very complex, because, for example, if you look at yesterday, all the security agencies, senior security personnel, Chief of Army Staff, the Inspector General of Police, and so on, that were invited to the event did not turn up. Some were sending not official representatives, but were sending their spokespersons. That is the person who interfaces with journalists, not a security officer whose job is, in fact, maintaining law and order and security. So that itself is a statement, it's a comment, about the confidence the security network in the country, the security agencies in the country have in our journalists. And the Nigerian Guild of Editors is not like the NUJ. It's a higher up there, because it is peopled by those people who hold managerial and leadership positions within media organizations, editors and above. You understand? So that itself is an indication of a crisis of confidence between the two parties, between editors or journalists or journalism and security agencies. So that needs to be addressed one way or another. We need to find ways of addressing this. That's one. Secondly, it's also an indication that there are many issues that we really need to address with regarding how we approach issues of security. One thing I will say is this: if you look at the American media system, or the British media system, or the media system of any country, they are pro-country first and foremost. So on issues of security, most media, they take a pro-nation approach to it. They don't do anti-government, because there's a difference between today's government, the sitting government, and Nigeria. I can be against Buhari, and indeed it's important to be against Buhari. It is dangerous if all of us are pro-Buhari. So it is very important to be against Buhari and to say it and to have the freedom to say it. But that is not the same thing as being against Nigeria.
Okay.
Against Buhari is a totally different thing from being against Nigeria. Against Nigeria is self-harm. Against Buhari is a professional duty that the media can have.
Okay, now how important is the media in providing information, intelligence, to security officials or security agencies, and how are they responding to them? Because you find situations where the media reports an issue and basically gives the security officials sometimes even a heads up about things that are happening, and you find sometimes there the reports are debunked or they are not taken seriously and all of that. How important is that collaboration, and how do we need to foster it?
I agree entirely with you. But again, it's also because the security agents themselves, sometimes it's clear to you, to those of us working in the media and who work with them, and not just to us, but to Nigerians at large, that they too, they have their own faults. The biggest of which is that it's not always true that they are actually serious about keeping security in the country. You understand? So, because if they are serious about keeping security in the country, for example, Daily Trust for a long time, we have been reporting that there is increasing collaboration between bandits and terrorist groups in the country, between bandits and factions of Boko Haram, factions of ISWAP, and so on and so forth. There is no indication yet, to our understanding, that the security agencies are working with this intelligence, because this is intelligence. You understand? Intelligence can come from any sources, even from ordinary citizens, but also especially from the media. So there is that sense that you tend to have that even the security agencies themselves, it's not like the keeping security or is top priority even in their own thoughts as well. So again, that leads to the crisis of confidence that I mentioned earlier. You understand? They feel that the media just against them, and then the media feel that these people are not serious, and so on. So we're talking on different sides of the mouth, which is why conferences such as this are quite important, to bring the two groups together, to come and dialogue, try to understand each other. But probably it shouldn't be only on a national scale. It can be downscaled to maybe at regional or statewide, smaller levels where individual journalists working in, say, Maiduguri and security agencies working there can meet on a regular basis to dialogue and exchange ideas on how we can help each other do our jobs better. Thank you.
Okay. Now, in the era of social media, many journalists will agree that the only way journalism can be relevant is if it distinguishes itself, by actually providing factual
Absolutely.
and verified information.
Absolutely.
So how can Nigerian journalists, explore that?
Well, again, but first of all, I agree with you entirely, because the people are saying that journalism is now dead because everyone is a journalist. So everyone has Twitter and Facebook and Snapchat and Instagram. So nobody needs journalism. That's entirely false. It is right now that we need journalists even more than before, because this is where you need somebody that actually has a process and procedure that they follow before they publish something as news or before they broadcast something as news, meaning that what will come out would not only be factual, but can be seen to be factual, because that verification element is important, So I think Nigerian journalists can demonstrate this by being more factual, by being more careful. The problem is that within the media, there is competition to break stories.
Right.
And competition to break stories, not only within the media, but also competition from the social media.
Right.
Because stories that you are still trying to verify, still trying to see whether it is true, trying to get somebody to talk to, is already out there on social media. And people don't really make much difference between what actually comes out from an established media organization and what they receive on their WhatsApp and so on. They believe some of these things just as much as they believe what is also on official media. So sometimes the time to do that investigation, to really find out, is not there. And then the social media is already flooded with what may in fact be fake news. So the media organizations and journalists, they face these challenges. But the reality is that time is worth taking,
right,
to get it right.
There's also another issue that is very, very important. In Nigeria, between the leaders and the led, there seems to be this mistrust, this huge gap of what people say trust deficit and all of that.
Yep.
How important is the media in bridging that gap? Because there seems to be a risk with that. At the risk of being a government spokesperson, how do you balance being factual and truthful and regaining confidence, of the people on government?
The trust is the deficit of trust is actually a form that maybe people call public trust and social trust. Public trust between citizens and government, social trust between one citizen and another. Unfortunately, what normally happens is that in most countries of the world, you have a situation where even where there is where there is a downturn in the public trust, that is in the trust between citizens and government, the trust between one citizen and another, that is the social trust, is still very high. So if I have never seen you before, we've never met before, but we are both Nigerians, and I find you on the road, I will not feel too scared to deal with you, because I trust that you are more likely to be like myself, someone who is doing things upright. You understand? The unfortunate situation with Nigeria is that both social trust and public trust are down. The trust between citizens and government and the trust between one citizen and another, both of them are in very poor state, and that affects all other forms of, or all other contexts and spaces where trust is important. So how do the media deal with these situations or work with government? Again, it's what we said earlier. They need to come together more, you understand, even Nigerians, to involve even the audiences as well in the discussion, not just the media and government, but even us Nigerians, the ordinary Nigerians who are audiences should also be involved in these discussions. For example, in training people in spotting what can be fake news, you understand, what they should believe and what they should not believe, you understand, and so on and so forth. All of these, they are all important, yes.
Okay, now, there's a directive that the NBC gave, journalists against journalists glamorizing terrorism activities, in the country.
Yes.
Do you think that contributes, to the spike in these activities?
Well, to the extent to which it contributes to the spike in these things is difficult to tell. But because you then have to show that you will have to isolate all the other reasons why there could have been a spike. For example, the incompetence of the security agencies, the clear incompetence of the security agencies, that too can lead to spike in these activities. So it's difficult to determine that it is only the glamorizing of terrorism in the media that is leading to the spike. You understand? But I agree that some of the reporting of these issues is glamorizing, particularly, and it's done in a way that is imbalanced. And this is my problem with the media in Nigeria. You see the same kinds of activities being perpetrated by different individuals, and then you call them different activities. So, for example, attacks by IPOB will be attacks for, agitation. IPOB or Sunday Igboho, for example, Yoruba Nation. This will be reported as something positive, as something, you understand, this is attack on Nigeria as well. But if you have attacks such as we had yesterday, then the media will report it as, as something bad, and indeed it is bad. The thing is that both are bad, and both should be approached from the same frame of reference. That is, as an attack against, our collective existence as a country.
But some would say that it's a right, it's a constitutional right, to self-determination, for instance, is a right, for every citizen, that every citizen should enjoy. So that's the angle, and that's the perspective, of some of the kind of, reports that we see and all of that, that these people are not evil people as, painted in some quarters, but rather they are people who are just, honest with themselves, and that they are tired with the, Nigeria, and they feel that the best way to go is to, secede and all of that. And others will argue that they are entitled to their opinion.
Everyone is entitled to their opinion. You understand? Everyone is entitled to. The problem is that to think that opinions do not have limits, because they do. And that's precisely what's going on. You understand? You do have entitlement to your opinion, but you don't have the right to order sit at home. Right. That on Mondays, everybody must sit at home. You don't have the right to enforce it. You don't have the right to harass citizens that seek to not follow your own opinion,
All right.
whatever reasons you are doing it for. And that's exactly what we are seeing in the country. Citizens who want to go about their businesses on the days that IPOB members order a sit-at-home are harassed. Some of them have been killed, their property destroyed, some of them injured and beaten to a pulp. You understand? Is that right to public opinion too? The media has a right, but also the responsibility and the duty to Nigeria, you understand, from where it lives, to separate these ideas as carefully as it can. The right to because that's what, in a way, is at least encouraging this sort of thing.
So you're saying that it seems like there's a mumbling of everything together into one.
Yes.
All right, now.
And that it is dangerous for the country. Even the same thing as the NSAS movement, for example. Do you notice that, did you know how many policemen were killed during the NSAS? Do you know how many vehicles and how many houses and homes were burnt down? You understand? How many women and girls were raped during these events? The reporting about this anniversary has not captured this area. It has only captured the area that those who went out protesting have a right to do so. So the policemen don't have rights to leave, or their families don't have rights to their breadwinners. It is this one-dimensional approach to conflict and complex issues by the Nigerian media that's the problem. Okay. We have to address it.
Okay, now, how is funding a factor determining the quality of journalism that we see in Nigeria and the role that it is supposed to play?
I come from a very different perspective. Anywhere in Nigeria, if you ask teachers, they say there is no funding. If you ask lecturers in the university, they say there is no funding. If you have security people, they say there is no funding. If you ask journalists, they say there is no funding. Who are you to believe? I don't believe all these things. If you want to do something good, you can do it with or without funding. I'm not trying to downplay the significance of funding to how processes can work, how professional processes such as the media can work. You understand? I know that funding is important. But I also know that throwing money at a problem would not by itself solve the problem. And money can, in fact, create its own problems alongside the existing problems that you wanted to solve in the first instance. Nobody should know that more than us in Nigeria, because we have thrown money at all sorts of problems without getting anywhere several times. You understand? So the idea that funding, it's a Nigerian media, they all make money, but maybe they don't invest as much as they should in content generation. And let me say that we're an exception, but you understand, maybe they don't invest as much as they should in content generation, in valuing reporters. But also we have to consider that even where this is done, you understand, there's really if you go to the newspaper houses or the media across the country, I want to believe that each of them, they have a pool of resources that journalists can actually draw from if they wanted to do it.
But
sometimes these resources are
I am talking from the angle of the political economy.
Okay.
The ownership and control, as something that also affects the quality, the balance, the fairness, that the media is supposed to portray, the objectivity that the media is supposed to have, in this instance. So how does that impact? And how do we ensure that there is this objectivity and all of the principles of professional journalism in Nigeria?
When people talk about this political economy thing, it just makes me laugh. This political media ownership and so on and so on. Media owners have influence on their media organizations, and some of them use this influence irresponsibly. And this happens everywhere in the world, not only in Nigeria. In fact, if you are familiar with the history of the media in Britain, and you know people like Rothermere, the so-called Lord Northcliffe, you understand, people like Maxwell, you know, people, and also in the US, you know, the Hearst family, how they use, even now, you know, a lot of people feel that the News Corp guy, Robert Murdoch, you know, he uses his ownership of media, large, you know, media organizations, and a lot of people have complaints about how he uses that influence. That one is always there. The point is that in Nigeria as elsewhere, there are many media owners who do not interfere at all, or do so to the very barest minimum with the general output or editorial direction of their paper.
Okay.
It is the media culture that is the issue.
Okay.
You understand? Where the individual journalist feels, and it is always the individual journalist in my thinking. So rather than use political economy as the unit of analysis, I look at the individual reporter, what he thinks, what he believes in. All of this also influence their approach to
that will also take us to another issue of quality training of journalists and all of that.
Thank you.
You know, the how enlightened.
Yeah.
You know, we may not be able to make blanket statements per se, but generally, how would you assess? You know, because all of that determines quality of what we churn out there in terms of informing people, members of the public, and that shapes also the direction of the people. So how can we really ensure that journalists, you know, are well aware and they take seriously the impact of the information that they release out there?
Well, training can help, but also litigation can help. Because part of the reasons, well, if you go to Nigerian journalists, and for those of us who came from an academic background, we're familiar with reading people telling us about the CRIFOs, telling us about the clampdown on the media in the country. And when Nigerian journalists or Nigerian media scholars go out into the world, they are quick to recall these incidences. You know, interestingly, they always recall the same incidences, you know, to show that it's not so recurring as people think. You understand, you know. But the thing is that, what about if you had a system where a lot of media organizations are made to pay, and to pay handsomely? Are you following? You know, where the legal system works both in favor but also against the media, and people have to pay a lot of money. Sometimes you see a situation where in one single litigation, a media organization is brought down to its heel completely, to bankruptcy. Then the other media will learn a lesson from that. Those ones that survive. You're getting what I'm saying, you know. It is because these incidences have not been common. In the UK, you have situations where the Telegraph, for example, or the Daily Mail, on a regular basis, you know, they have had to pay millions of pounds to individual people who are part of the news that they report, or even ordinary audience members who feel harmed by their reporting. Once they can win in courts, you understand, you know, then these people will be made to pay. So if that starts to hit your finances as an organization, it will then compel you to guide your journalists on what the right thing to do is, because everyone knows what the right thing is. You understand? I'll give you an example. There's this thing that is happening in our newspaper culture. The Punch refers to Buhari government as regime. This is irresponsible. This is unacceptable. Entirely unacceptable. I don't speak for Buhari, and anyone who follows my writing cannot say that I am pro-Buhari in any way. In any case, there's nothing wrong in being pro-Buhari. It's a political position as the same as being anti-Buhari. We have to be tolerant of diversity of views in Nigeria. You understand? You know. So if someone is pro-Buhari, it doesn't make them bad.
Okay.
You understand? You know. So you are referring to an elected presidency as a regime. That's desecration of the office. That's desecration of Nigerian democracy. It's the worst form of disrespect a media organization can show to its own constitution.
Okay.
But out of the issues of rights, and rights here I mean being irresponsible, the right to be irresponsible, it is It is accepted as normal. It isn't normal. And people should come out and condemn it.
Okay. Now, before we wrap up, the discussion, I've been meaning to ask this actually. Now, over the years, journalism experts have realized that advertising alone does not sustain, a media setup. And they've suggested that media houses need to diversify revenue streams. So what are some of these, streams media owners could actually key into to generate revenue?
What has really happened? This is an area that everyone is interested in. You understand? Particularly those of us in media management now. You understand? Because staying afloat has become more challenging. It was challenging 10, 15 years ago. It's even more so now. Because you are now in competition. The advertising revenues have actually increased. It is just that they are not coming to newspapers directly. They are going to Facebook and Twitter and social media, who themselves do not produce content. What you are doing here, this program is being produced, by Trust TV. So you're responsible for it. Social media, they don't produce the content. It is the people who are on them that produce the content. You understand? So what has changed is the advertising model itself. Advertising no longer goes directly to media organizations. It goes to the platforms where everybody is, where all the people are. So what media are trying to do about this means that the old model where you have media, audience, advertisers, that has now broken down. There is no model, business model, single business model for media organizations again, or for the industry again. Each organization has to build its own model based on the niche that it can create for itself within the market it is situated in. So in Nigeria, for example, some people are trying this membership of a thing to see that they can draw in members at Daily Trust, for example. We're looking at young membership because our current readership for the newspaper getting old. We want a situation where before they die off, this is no offense, you understand? Before they die off, we get young people that will replace them because we want the paper to remain in perpetuity. You understand? We want the value that it gives to people to remain in perpetuity. So we are targeting younger members of the public, particularly within our constituency areas, so that they can grow up as they are growing up from high school. They can grow up along with the paper in their lives, so that the paper plays roles in their professional lives, in their personal lives, in their marital lives, and so on and so forth. So that's the one model that we are adopting. Okay. And I hope that our competitors will not see this as free intelligence.
Okay. So, but do we have more media houses in Nigeria exploring the use of newsletters as well?
Yes, but newsletters are usually free. They don't they don't on their own, they don't attract revenue, but they still attract revenue because that's the nature of advertising. What happens is if you can have in-depth and detailed data about those who have signed up to your newsletters, your morning newsletters, some newspapers, for example, the New York Times, they have emails for 4 million people. So every morning they can be sure that they send the newsletters to 4 million people. And the details that they have about this 4 million, their incomes, where they work, their age, their demographics, and so on and so forth. This information can be very useful to advertisers. You understand? So because it can help in direct targeting for advertisers. So if you have the newsletters, the people may not be paying, but if you can collect in-depth data about who is signed up to your newsletter, then that can help your advertising strategies better. So it can lead to revenue, actually.
All right. Well, thank you for your thoughts. Let's go on a quick break now, and then when we come back, the show will round up. Please stay with us.
noise in Shiko.
All right, thank you for staying with us. You're watching Daybreak on Trust Television. Now, we will be taking a look at sports in 60 seconds, as always, to bring you up to date with what's happening in the sporting world. Take a look.
Hello, welcome to Trust Sports in 60 seconds. The Super Falcons of Nigeria defeated Ghana's Black Queens 2-0 in the first leg of the African Women's Cup of Nations qualifier against Morocco on Wednesday at the Mobolaji Johnson Arena in Lagos. Ole Gunnar Solskjaer praised the match winner Cristiano Ronaldo's overall impact as Manchester United rallied to defeat Atalanta on a night when poor defending threatened to cast them alone. Chelsea manager Thomas Tuchel has confirmed that Timo Werner and Romelu Lukaku may be out for a while after injuring themselves against Malmo in the Champions League. In the match, they started up front against Malmo, but they were forced off the field during the first half. And finally, former Liverpool midfielder Jose Enrique believes Steve Gerrard has the ability to turn around Newcastle's United fortunes if given the manager's job. And that's all the top headlines on Trust Sports in 60 seconds. Don't forget to subscribe, like, and follow us across all social media platforms.
Well, with this, we've come to the end of Daybreak for today. It's been quite an interesting discussion, hasn't it?
Very, very interesting. I mean, looking at, the issues of the rail track vandalization or destruction, if you like to call it, and then, of course, the issue of the trial of the leader of the independent indigenous people of Biafra, IPOB, Nnamdi Kanu, and also looking at what role the media can play in all of these narratives to set the record straight and to do its job, as a platform that serves as link between the leaders and the led. And we had Suleiman, Deputy Editor-in-Chief, Daily Trust newspaper, in the studio to spotlight and give us perspectives on all these various issues. Thank you so much for coming on the show.
Thank you for
this morning.
Thank you.
For those of you watching and you've missed or you are just joining, then you can catch up on our social media handles and also follow us across all social media handles. We are doing this every 7 a.m. to 9 a.m. on weekdays, and I'm sure it's something that you want to always tune to have a
today is Friday.
Yes.
We're going into the weekend.
Yeah.
Do you have any plans?
Some people say.
Do you have any plans for the weekend?
Not exactly, well, I'll try to see if I can relax. I will always say I'll try, because you're never sure. You'll be taking a nap, and then next minute something comes up, and then your attention is needed and all that. So yeah, I'll try to relax. Today is Friday, so it's supposed to be a relaxing mood activated from today, even though we walk around the clock. Yeah.
Okay. We'll have to stop here.
Yes.
Please join us next week for more exciting package of Daybreak. I'm Zainab Bella. Thank you so much.
And I am Ayuba Ilia. Thank you for watching, and join us again next week.